It's not a glitch, Dad. Someone's breaching the system. Lila Bennett's voice was steady, far too steady for a 12-year-old gripping a mop, her eyes fixed on a blinking red monitor in the server corridor of Nexacorp. Her father, Carl, knelt beside her, scrubbing a coffee stain from the polished floor tile. He paused, grumbling without looking up. "You're seeing shadows again, Lila. That's just a maintenance screen." But Lila didn't budge. Her gaze stayed locked on the digital panel above the server rack. The screen flickered, static, then black, then streams of scarlet code poured down. They shouldn't have been there. Not this early, not in this wing. It was 5:48 a.m., and Carl had brought Lila for his pre-dawn janitorial shift. Nexacorp, a tech giant behind major government contracts, was a fortress at this hour, but the West Wing was unlocked for floor waxing. Carl figured it was safe to bring his daughter. Lila never wandered. She was a silent shadow, more captivated by machines than cartoons. Her mop handle clattered to the floor. She took a step toward the server unit, eyes narrowing. "This isn't a screen error," she whispered. "Someone's tunneling into their backup drives." Carl stood slowly, wiping his hands on his overalls. "Now hold on. We don't mess with what's not ours, you understand." "I didn't touch anything," Lila replied, pointing. "But if they don't stop it, the admin core will spread malicious code to the client branches. That's millions of dollars." Her voice was calm, certain, no excitement, no guessing, just fact. 3 floors up, Nora Caldwell strode to her office, latte in hand, phone pressed to her ear. As CEO of Nexacorp, her mornings began before most people were awake. But today, her executive dashboard refused to load, and the fingerprint scanner to the strategy room flashed red. By 6:01, her tech director called from the basement, voice trembling. "We've got multiple breaches. It looks like an internal takeover. The data nodes aren't responding to shutdown commands." "What's the potential damage?" Nora asked. "If we don't contain it in the next 15 minutes, we could lose Project Aurora and the D&D node mirror." "That's everything." Nora's latte hit the floor, unnoticed. Back in the corridor, Carl crouched beside Lila for a better look. He didn't understand most of what he saw, but years of hearing Lila mutter about algorithms and logic trees told him something was gravely wrong. "You sure about this, Lila?" She nodded. "The script's clever. It loops, hides, mimics internal test signals. That's why they didn't catch it. But it's not from here. It's foreign. Whoever wrote it knows how to mask it as system diagnostics." A piercing alarm suddenly wailed through the hallway. Lila didn't flinch. Carl stepped protectively in front of her. Moments later, 2 IT staffers rounded the corner, faces pale. The younger one froze, seeing Lila pointing at the terminal. "What are you two doing here?" "Cleaning," Carl said, holding up his badge. Lila spoke up. "Check the parity logs from last night, around 2:07 a.m. That's when it started tunneling. It's cloaked. You'll need to reverse the node path from internal route F4. The older tech blinked. "How the hell do you know that?" Lila shrugged. "I read fast." The younger one glanced at the screen, then at Lila. "Wait, she's right. See the pattern? She's right. Get this to Ms. Caldwell." The older tech barked, pulling a secure tablet from his belt. By 6:15, Nora Caldwell had a team crowded in the lower-level server room. Lila and Carl stood off to the side, Lila holding a yellow mop bucket like a misplaced ghost. Nora stared at the girl, then at the code streaming across the mainframe monitors. "Who is this?" "My daughter," Carl said quietly. "Get her out of here." But before the guards could move, the lead engineer raised a hand. "Ma'am, the girl's right. She flagged the code before we did. If we run her trace model, we might isolate the source before the auto backups push it company-wide." Nora blinked, then approached Lila, sizing her up, torn hoodie, oversized sneakers, a spark of curiosity in her eyes. "You've got 60 seconds. Tell me exactly what you saw." Lila stepped forward, no smile, no stammer, pointing at the code. "You're trying to lock down the breach, but that's not the entry point. They got in last night, before your diagnostics updated. I think they slipped through a dummy file posing as a system patch. I can find it." I drew a map. She unrolled a napkin from her pocket, covered in graphite lines and tiny numbers. Nora stared at it, then at her. "Draw it again on my glass wall." "Now." Lila hesitated. "Can my dad stay?" Nora paused. "Yes." So Lila, sleeves still damp with mop water, stepped forward and began to draw. In the command room of a billion-dollar company, silence fell. The janitor's daughter had become their best hope for survival. Nora watched as Lila finished the diagram on the glass wall, a sprawling web of connections, protocol paths, and redirect clusters, drawn with the confidence of someone twice her age. Behind her, engineers stood in stunned silence. The girl's handwriting was neat, deliberate, and oddly familiar, echoing the precision of someone who not only knew the system but respected its depth. "She's mapping a reverse tunnel," someone whispered. Lila stepped back and pointed. "This loop here is where the rogue code's replicating. It's disguised as a backup sync, bouncing off a spoofed internal signature. You've been feeding it credentials every 10 minutes without knowing." Nora crossed her arms. "So how do we stop it?" Lila glanced at her father. Carl gave a gentle nod, his eyes reassuring. "You need to lock the signal out from all local mirrors, but that won't work unless you rebuild the admin tree from the core, the real core, the fallback node in Santa Clara." Everyone froze. "You mean the physical backup?" "That's not even online yet," an engineer stammered. "It's in cold storage." Lila nodded. "Exactly. That's why it's clean." Nora turned to her lead tech. "Can we access it remotely?" He hesitated. "If she's right, and I think she is, we'll need to elevate privileges from the legacy shell. That means manual override." "Then do it," Nora said sharply. The team scattered, leaving Lila and Carl alone by the wall. Carl knelt beside his daughter, voice low. "Sweetheart, how'd you know all that? You've never touched their systems." "I read their protocols last year when you cleaned the copy room," Lila said. "They left old manuals out, and I remembered the test ports I saw yesterday. I just put it together." Carl exhaled slowly. "You always were different." Upstairs, chaos simmered under a calm facade. Board members dialed into emergency sessions, legal advisors whispered in corners, and Nora strode through the hall, Lila's napkin diagram in hand. She stopped before her assistant. "Find out everything about that girl. Quietly. No press, no chatter." The assistant nodded and got to work. Back in the server corridor, engineers worked frantically under Lila's hand-drawn instructions. Lila sat on a bench, feet swinging slightly, eating a granola bar Carl had packed. "I'm gonna get fired," Carl muttered. "No, you're not," Lila said. "You didn't break anything." He chuckled, but his eyes stayed wide, darting nervously whenever someone important passed. Suddenly, a tech lead sprinted toward them. "We need her upstairs." Carl stood protectively. "Now hold on, she's just a kid." The man ignored him. "She's the only one who understands the patchwork enough to navigate the route. If we don't give her a terminal, we'll lose the sync window in 5 minutes." Nora arrived, her tone calm but ironclad. "Mr. Bennett, I promise she'll be safe in that room. And if she pulls this off, she won't leave here as just the janitor's daughter." Carl looked at Lila. She nodded. In the top-floor emergency control suite, the lights were dim, screens flickering with red alerts and progress logs. Lila sat on a stool at a secure console, 3 engineers behind her like skeptical shadows. But when her fingers hit the keys, silence fell again. Command by command, She moved through the layers with ease, her eyes steady, her breath even. She was in her element, calm, focused, absorbed. The screen flickered. "We're in," an engineer breathed. She just tunneled into the legacy shell. 30 seconds, another warned. Lila typed a final command, leaned back, and said, "Shut down all local bridges now." The room held its breath. Then green. The alarms stopped. Monitors cleared. The threat isolated. The breach severed. A cheer erupted, but Lila didn't smile. She exhaled quietly and turned to Carl. "Can we go home now?" Nora stepped forward, heels clicking. "Lila, you just saved a corporation from a multi-million-dollar catastrophe." "I didn't mean to," Lila replied. "I just didn't want the screen to lie." If you think Lila's a brilliant young mind, give her a like and comment where you're watching from. Who knows, someone nearby might be following this story too. Nora studied her. "Would you like to come back tomorrow?" "Not to clean, to learn. We could use a mind like yours." Lila hesitated. "Can my dad come too?" Nora smiled. "Yes. In fact, he'll be on payroll as senior facility supervisor." Carl's jaw dropped. Lila squeezed his hand. Outside, the morning sun rose, and in Silicon Valley, a janitor's daughter had rewritten her future with a napkin and a truth no one else saw. The next morning, the break room at Nexacorp was unusually quiet. Word of the breach, the narrow escape, and the girl in sneakers with a janitor's badge who outsmarted a cyber attack had spread like wildfire. People whispered about her, though her name wasn't yet spoken aloud. Those who'd seen it firsthand were still grappling with what they'd witnessed. In the facility wing, Carl was back in uniform, but it was newer, cleaner, with a patch reading supervisor. He stood at the janitor's station, clipboard in hand, pretending to check inventory while watching Lila sip chocolate milk from a carton at a staff table. "I'm not used to people staring," Lila mumbled, barely looking up. Carl smiled gently. "They're not staring, baby. They're seeing you. That's different." Nora Caldwell entered, sharp in a gray blazer and navy trousers. She paused when she saw Lila, her tone softening. "Good morning, Lila." "Hi," Lila said warily. Nora approached carefully, hands unclasped, as if not to startle her. "I want to thank you again for yesterday. Not just the fix, but how you stayed calm when we were all losing it." Lila looked at her shoes. "I don't like loud yelling. It scrambles my thoughts, so I focus harder to block it out." Nora blinked, momentarily thrown by the honesty, then recovered. "Well, that focus saved us millions. The board's curious. They'd like to meet you." Carl tensed. "She's not a showpiece." "Of course not," Nora replied. "But she deserves to be seen beyond hallway whispers." That afternoon, in the 12th floor boardroom, Lila sat at the end of a long glass table, her feet dangling 6 inches above the floor. The board, older men and sharp-dressed women, murmured and clicked pens as Nora introduced her. "She's not a hacker," Nora clarified. "She's a pattern reader. What she did wasn't luck, it was insight." A director leaned forward. "How old are you, Lila?" 11, she replied. "But I'll be 12 next March." Another asked, "Did someone teach you these systems?" "No," Lila said. "I just watched, read, then figured out why things worked the way they did. If something didn't make sense, I traced it until it did." Silence followed. The chairman cleared his throat. "That's more initiative than half our IT staff." Some laughed, others didn't. Nora stood. "I propose a mentorship program, quiet, in-house. Lila works part-time with the cybersecurity team, under supervision. No PR, no press, just a chance to nurture talent. And we'll compensate her family accordingly." Lila looked at Carl. He nodded slowly. "Okay," Lila said. "But I don't want to wear anything with shoulder pads." The room chuckled. The vote passed unanimously. That evening, on the city bus, Lila sat beside her father, watching the lights blur outside. "Do you think they mean it?" she asked. Carl considered. "I think they saw something unexpected, and now they're trying to keep up." Lila pulled her knees up. "I don't want to change. I just want to understand why people do dumb things with smart machines." Carl smiled. "That might be your greatest gift. You see the whole puzzle, not just the pieces." At home, Lila opened her composition notebook and sketched a new network layout. Not for the company, but for herself. A dream map, connections between her world, dad, school, code, silence, the janitor's closet, the glass boardroom. Each line was precise, each path intentional. She didn't know it yet, but that sketch would shape Nexacorp's training protocol for the next decade. The next morning, Lila entered through the front entrance, a temporary badge clipped to her hoodie. Lila Bennett, Junior Systems Advisor, Provisional. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Others in the lobby glanced, half smiling, half curious. Upstairs, the cyber team had set up a workspace, a modest desk, a monitor, a whiteboard, and a basket of snacks. Nora greeted her with a nod, but gave her space. "Take your time. Explore. Ask anything." Lila sat, placed her fingers on the keyboard, and breathed in. No breach, no panic, just possibility. In the corner, Carl stood with his mop, smiling through quiet tears. A week later, Lila was a quiet presence in Nexacorp's cybersecurity unit, moving like a shadow among machines and murmurs. She spoke little unless addressed, but her words always made people pause. She was sketching an access flowchart when a deep voice startled her. "That's not our standard model. Where'd you learn that loop structure?" Lila turned to see Marcus Reed, the senior cyber defense officer, eyeing her whiteboard. Tall, dark-skinned, built like a linebacker turned tech, his bluntness was notorious. "I didn't learn it," Lila said, uncapping a marker. "I noticed the system struggles with nested conditions and overlapping logs, so I mapped a cleaner bypass." Marcus narrowed his eyes, said nothing, then tapped his tablet and froze. "You're right. We've had latency spikes exactly where your loop would fix it." Nora Caldwell stepped in, catching his reaction. "Problem? Solution?" Marcus muttered, then turned to Lila. "Come sit in on Thursday's strategy meeting. Just listen for now." Lila blinked. "Do I have to talk?" "No," Nora said, smiling. "But we might ask you to write." Thursday, Lila sat quietly in the sleek conference room, a notebook on her lap. Executives and analysts debated projections, threat maps, and breach forensics. When a tangled data cluster diagram appeared, Lila squinted. Something was off. She stared longer than anyone else. Marcus noticed. "See something, kid?" Lila hesitated, then stood, walked to the whiteboard, and drew a single box. "This one," she said, circling it. "It's not a normal endpoint. The timestamps are too regular, like it's automated, but no one notices because it mimics backup protocols." Silence fell. An analyst typed furiously, eyes widening. "She's right. We thought it was a routine ping, but it's too consistent, even during maintenance blackouts." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Could be a sleeper script for long-term extraction." Nora's voice turned sharp. "Kill the access now." Within minutes, the team mobilized, confirming Lila's instinct. That night, Carl picked her up with a grilled cheese and grapes. "You're quiet," he said in the elevator. "I pointed out something today," Lila said slowly, "and they fixed it fast." "Did that surprise you?" Carl chuckled. "When you save $100,000 before lunch, people listen, even if you're 4 feet tall." She grinned. It felt good, not just to be right, but to be trusted. The next morning, Nora called Lila into her minimalist office with a city view. "We're bringing in an external consultant to audit the breach trail. Ex-FBI, knows how to chase ghosts in networks. Victor Shaw." Lila nodded, but her stomach tightened. Outsiders meant questions. She preferred wires to faces. When Victor arrived, his charcoal suit, salt and pepper beard, and heavy boots made him look more spy than analyst. He surveyed the room with cautious calm. "You're Lila," he said, eyes crinkling. "Heard you've got a mind like a trapdoor." She shifted. "I just noticed things." "Good. That's half the job." He turned to Marcus and Nora. "I want a complete code-based scrub. Anything flagged as routine over the last 2 months." Marcus frowned. "That's 6 terabytes. "I know," Victor said. "That's where the clever ones hide." Lila sat in on every scan, watching code stream like rain. Victor didn't talk much, but when he did, she listened. He leaned over her shoulder. "See that compression key?" Lila nodded. "It's a camouflage protocol. They hid traffic and audio files." Victor raised an eyebrow. "You spotted that without tools?" "I listen to music while I work. I heard the pattern." By dusk, they'd found 2 ghost nodes, stealthy access points waiting to reactivate. Marcus clapped Victor's back. "You were right to go deeper." Victor shook his head. She pointed the way. "I just followed." That evening, Lila sketched in her notebook, not just data flow, but people, names in circles, arrows linking departments and personalities. She was learning that machines weren't the only systems to understand. She felt, for the first time, like she was shaping the world, not just reacting to it. Victor stood in the hallway outside the server room, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. "Something's wrong," he muttered. Lila, trailing with a notepad, looked up. "Did we miss something in the logs?" "They're too clean," he replied. "Someone that smart doesn't leave a door half open unless they want us to walk in." Lila's brow furrowed. "You think we're being baited?" Victor didn't answer. He pushed the server room door open. The space was cold, humming with LED pulses, but the silence felt calculated. Marcus and Nora arrived, tense. "We locked out the compromised endpoints and reset the protocols," Marcus said, "but I agree with Victor. Something's off." Lila crouched near a lower rack, spotting an unfamiliar cluster of ports. "This wasn't here last week," she murmured, pointing to a tiny module. Nora knelt beside her. "You sure? I help Dad clean this room every Saturday. He lets me polish the baseboards." "That port's too new." Marcus examined it, paling. "It's not on our inventory. Can you pull it?" Victor asked. Marcus hesitated, then grabbed a tools case. The team watched as he detached the thumb-sized component with a microcooling unit and encrypted chip. Victor studied it. "This isn't just a back door. It's a smart relay, listens, adapts, mimics internal traffic." Lila stepped closer, like a voice mimic for data. Victor glanced at her, impressed. "Exactly." Nora's phone buzzed. She answered curtly. "Caldwell." Her face tightened. "You need to see this." She put the call on speaker. Denise, the financial security director, spoke. "Our wire queue triggered a false approval alert. Someone's rerouting credentials through dummy executives." Victor's jaw clenched. "It's starting. Freeze all outbound transfers." Nora ordered. Denise replied. "Already done, but if they've planted scripts in other sectors." "They have," Victor said coldly. "This relay's a hive. We need to smoke out the queen." Hours passed in a blur. The building was on high alert, employees off the network, firewalls restructured, server rooms swept. Lila sat at a temporary operations desk in the boardroom, monitors flickering with code and tracking scripts. "What are you seeing?" Victor asked, holding lukewarm coffee. Lila pointed to a repeating code string. "This runs every 5 minutes. Looks harmless, but its timestamp lags 12 seconds behind other logs." Victor's brows furrowed. "It's not responding with the system. It's watching, reacting." She nodded. "It's syncing with an outside clock." Marcus chimed in. "That means it's taking orders beyond the firewall." Nora entered. So we've got a live enemy, not just old malware. Lila's hands trembled as she typed. She wasn't used to this pressure, but a quiet fire kept her going. A screen flashed red. Marcus swore. Finance servers are trying to reauthorize wire access. Denise's voice crackled. I didn't request that. Someone used your credentials, Victor growled. Nora snapped her fingers. Trace the signal. Lila was already on it, chasing IP echoes and terminal routes. The path zigzagged, mimicking email patterns and typing cadences, but paused just long enough for Lila to spot the 12-second lag. There, she shouted. It's from subserver pod 4B, the offline backups. Marcus grabbed his badge. I'll go. No, Victor said sharply. We all go. They raced 3 flights underground to a dim corridor of concrete and pipes. At pod 4B, Marcus swiped his badge, but the door stayed locked. It's rerouted, he said, running on external authorization. Lila stepped forward. Wait. She pulled a flash drive from her pocket, used for music files. I saved a firewall log mirror. If I spoof the timestamp. She plugged it in, typed furiously, and the door hissed open. Inside, the air was cold, rows of servers blinking. A terminal in the corner flashed active code. Nora scanned it. It's not just pulling money. It's copying employee profiles, identity tokens, behavioral patterns. Victor stepped closer. This is identity hijacking. They were going to clone us digitally and run the company from outside. Lila whispered. That's why the system didn't crash. It shifted. Victor nodded grimly. Another hour, and it'd be too late. They disconnected the system, isolating it for analysis. Lila backed up files to an encrypted drive. As they returned upstairs, tension eased, but no one celebrated. The question wasn't how it happened. It was who helped from inside and why. The next morning, Nexacorp Tower felt heavy with uneasy quiet. Executive offices stayed locked, systems offline. Lila sat in the break room, her cocoa cold, staring at Dallas's skyline. Daniel, Carl's name shifts to match later references, polished the reception hall floor, glancing at her with concern. You didn't sleep much, he said softly. Lila smiled tiredly. Neither did you. Daniel poured coffee. You saved something big last night. I was part of a team, she replied, unsure if she felt proud, scared, or exhausted. Nora entered with Victor and Marcus, all grim. We need to talk, Nora said. Lila stood, brushing crumbs from her jeans. In a secure conference room, they showed footage from Pod 4B, a grainy figure near the terminal before the team arrived. Marcus zoomed in on the ID badge. Nora swore. It was Ethan Carver, head of internal IT, a 20-year veteran who mentored employees and hosted charity events. That explains the smart relay, Marcus whispered. He knew where to embed it. Lila shook her head. Why would he risk everything? Victor answered flatly. Someone offered more than everything. That afternoon, CEO Richard Ellison paced behind his desk as the team presented evidence. He's been selling behavioral data, Nora explained. Employee patterns, login routines, speech samples. To who? Ellison demanded. Marcus didn't look up. A shell corporation in Latvia, likely a front for bigger buyers. Lila spoke. He was building a ghost company, a version of Nexacorp that didn't need us, running on algorithms and faceless boards. Silence fell. Ellison exhaled. Do we have him? Not yet, Nora said. He's disappeared, cleared his office, left town last night. But we've frozen the accounts and isolated the data sets. Victor added, he won't go far without access. Ellison turned to Lila. How old are you again? 13, she said. He chuckled humorlessly. And you saw what professionals didn't. I just pay attention, Lila replied. He crouched to her level. We'll need your help. Quiet minds matter more than loud titles. That evening, In the operations room, Marcus handed Lila a flash drive, encrypted backup of her backup. She hesitated. You think he'll come back? Marcus's eyes darkened. If he's smart, no? But people like him always make one mistake. Lila glanced at the door, recalling Pod 4BS chill. What if we missed it? Marcus smiled. Then we'll find it. You and me, kid. Later, Daniel tucked away his badge as they left. Cleaners and guards nodded with respect. At the elevator, he asked, You okay? I think so, Lila said. He nodded. Your mom would have said this isn't just your gift, it's your calling. Lila blinked hard. She believed in patterns, said even silence had a rhythm. Daniel smiled. And you're teaching everyone to listen. As they stepped into the elevator, hope flickered, not because the danger was gone, but because a janitor's daughter showed them where to look. The next 48 hours blurred with urgency. Nexacorp operated on emergency protocol with skeleton crews. Lila, added to the clearance list by Nora's handwritten note, arrived Saturday morning, backpack slung, muffin in hand. The lobby echoed with stillness, broken by backup generators. In the cybersecurity room, Victor and Marcus were stationed. We caught a ping at 2:13 a.m., Victor said. Brief, 36 seconds. Marcus added, Ethan's ghost company tried cloning behavioral profiles again. Your firewall held, but he's still in the U.S. Lila dropped her backpack. He's not giving up. He's running out of time, Victor replied. What he's doing now is sloppy, desperate. Lila nodded. That's when people slip. Marcus smiled faintly. You sound like Nora. The door opened, and Nora entered with a dossier. Ethan's shell company was registered under an alias from college, Cole Harlan. Links to an address outside Dallas, a rented space in an abandoned logistics hub. She showed a blurry photo of Ethan in a white SUV, heading south. Lila stared. So he's running. Or regrouping, Nora said. Victor stood. We move now. Marcus glanced at Lila. What about her? Nora looked at Lila. She stays here. You're valuable, but you're not a field agent. Lila bit her lip, nodding, though frustration burned. By noon, Nora's team was en route to Dallas. Lila stayed glued to the monitors, shifting between code reviews, diagnostics, and a tracking script she wrote. Daniel pushed his cleaning cart, stopping by. You haven't looked up in 2 hours. She stretched, just keeping eyes on the data. He set down water and a protein bar. Sharp things dull when overused. She smiled. Thanks, Dad. A subroutine pinged. Lila leaned forward. There's a return signal from a dummy subnet. It's replying to itself. Daniel squinted. Normal? No, she said, typing fast. It's a back door, triggering like a heartbeat. Marcus's voice crackled via speakerphone. Lila, you at the tower? Yeah, sending it now. Marcus whistled. Buried in Pod 5 as offline cache. Ethan planted it weeks ago, and it's learning. Daniel asked, learning? Adjusting to firewall patterns, Lila said. It's not him typing, it's an autonomous loop. Marcus replied, if it's self-evolving, it could bypass once conditions match. Lila said, it's waiting. Marcus paused. Clone the clone. Feed it decoy data. Lila's fingers flew, building a sandbox environment. Daniel watched, awed by her focus. 10 minutes later, Marcus confirmed the loop was isolated. Nora's voice came through. We found the hub. It's clean. He wiped it, but left a powered router. Your ghost loop transmitted from here 30 minutes ago. Lila responded. He left it as insurance, hoping it'd finish after he vanished. Nora's tone sharpened. You outsmarted a cyber warfare veteran. Lila looked down. He underestimated who was watching. Nora added softly. That's what brings systems down, not the breach, the blind spot. That evening, on Nexacorp's rooftop, Lila and Daniel stood as wind tugged her hoodie. She held the flash drive. You keeping that forever? Daniel asked. She smiled. Maybe I'll build something better with it. He nodded proudly. Your mom saw your spark. I see it now. They do too. Lila looked at the city lights. Is it over? Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. People like Ethan run out of time, but folks like you are just starting. She believed it for the first time. Monday morning, Nexacorp's conference room was packed. Executives and engineers sat, eyes avoiding the screen pulsing, integrity compromised. Nora stood by the window, jaw tight. Marcus sifted audit logs. Lila sat with Daniel, his janitor's uniform contrasting the suits. Nora spoke. We neutralized the breach vector, thanks to Marcus's oversight and Lila's detection. She gestured to Lila, who lowered her eyes. A few nodded, one clapped, then stopped. Marcus added, a third-party firm linked to Ethan's shell started soft bids for acquisition days before the breach. His endgame was takeover. Murmurs spread. Nora continued. Had we not intervened, those bids, triggered by a phantom board meeting today, would have had legal backing. Evelyn Harper, ethics board head, spoke. So Ethan destabilized confidence to justify selling the company to himself. Yes, Marcus said, and he nearly succeeded. George Caldwell, co-founder, leaned forward. How did a child find what our cybersecurity team missed? Lila looked up, voice steady. I wasn't looking at the walls. I was watching the floor. He hid it in how the code behaved. Most look for malware like wolves, but this was a ghost. It echoed. No one interrupted. Daniel spoke. She saw patterns we weren't trained to see. She listened to what the code was saying. Nora nodded. Because of that, Nexacorp stands. The screen faded to a blank slate. Our priority now is to restore what was nearly lost. That afternoon, Lila wandered to the rooftop glass garden, free of machines. She sat by a planter, staring at the city. Nora approached, barefoot, and sat beside her silently. I didn't mean for this, Lila said softly. I know, Nora replied. But sometimes life chooses you. Lila frowned. I'm just a kid. You're more, Nora said. Some wait for the fire. Others smell smoke first. You acted. Lila hesitated. Will Ethan come back? Nora shook her head. People like him don't disappear, but they return weaker, alone. Lila turned to her. And I'm not alone? Not anymore, Nora said gently. A new plaque was mounted in the atrium, inscribed by Nora. True integrity isn't in the systems we build, but in those who protect them when no one's watching. In honor of Lila Bennett. By Tuesday evening, rain tapped Nexacorp's windows. The building resumed its rhythm, but something had shifted in its people. Lila stood at the reception desk, her badge swinging, shoes squeaking. Eyes followed her, not with pity, but respect. She waited. Miss Bennett. A deep voice called. Colonel Nathan Bryce, Cyber Threat Response Unit, stood with two disciplined men, holding a leather folder. We've reviewed your breach files. We'd like to discuss anomalies you flagged. Off the record. Lila blinked. I'm just a kid. Bryce smiled. Exactly. You're not bound by protocol. Daniel watched from behind a fern, pride in his eyes. Nora arrived, greeting the officers. I told them to speak with the one who saw it first. In a side conference room, Bryce showed a map of attack vectors. This may have been reconnaissance, not just sabotage. Dormant code, waiting for a trigger. Lila spotted a nested bypass. That's the marker from Ethan's login trail. It was always bigger than Nexacorp. Marcus, joining late, cleared his throat. Ethan had overseas contacts, shell companies in Geneva, defunct crypto exchanges. Bryce nodded. You stopped a network from gaining a U.S. foothold. 2 weeks later, the atrium filled with quiet applause for an unadvertised ceremony. Nora spoke at a podium under the skylight. Courage comes not from age or title, but from instinct when the world says stay silent. We owe Lila Bennett for seeing what others didn't, for standing up when it was easier to walk away. Lila stepped forward, paper in hand. My mom said the world doesn't ask if you're ready. It throws the moment at you. I didn't mean to be a hero. I asked a question, followed what felt wrong. That was enough. If you're the quiet one, don't let that stop you. Sometimes, being quiet means you're the only one listening. Applause swelled. That night, on their balcony, Daniel handed Lila chamomile tea. You did good, baby. She smiled. You said mop handles teach balance. I didn't think it'd be between a firewall and a task force. He chuckled. You're different now. I see it. I'm not invisible anymore, Lila whispered. No, he said, but never forget the strength in being unseen. She leaned against him, still, safe, seen. The city moved on.